today, the sourdough journey continues. I recap 49ers free agency a week in and talk about why they need to start Trey Lance next season. It's story time with Chris. All right, let's get right into things. So last time I spoke to you guys, it was about the Aaron Rodgers situation. And before I got into that, I told you about the start of our sourdough journey that my wife and I are on. And at this point, it's going all right, I would say. We tried making 2 more loaves of sourdough bread since that last episode. The first one failed horribly. It just never rose, and it was very, very flat, not very, very dense, not great bread. And then we ended up buying like this whole sourdough bread making kit off Amazon that came with a bunch of like a bread basket, razors to score the bread, a special whisk, and some other stuff. And so after that came in, we tried another loaf of bread, and this time around it actually turned out really, really good. The loaf, it rose a little bit more than the other one. I would say that there is still room for improvement there, but it was very, very tasty, and I think we actually still have some left, so we got to finish that up before it goes bad. But besides that, we've been trying to use our sourdough discard. And for those of you who are not familiar with sourdough discard, I mean, I'm not an expert at it, but it's basically, so sourdough is fermented yeast stuff. It's not I don't know what it is off the top of my head. I would have to look it up. So sorry for sounding dumb about that. But discard, sourdough starter is basically like a yeast. It's a living organism. You're supposed to feed it every day if you're using it pretty often. So every time that you feed it, and then 24 hours later, you discard a certain part, like usually half of it is what I do. So that discarded portion, a lot of people either end up throwing away or they save it because you can use it in a lot of different recipes. So we have a lot of discard because we keep feeding our bread and we're not using it as often, or we keep feeding our starter, but we're not using it as often as we probably should be, just because we don't have a lot of time to do it. So we found some great sourdough discard recipes. And the first one that we tried was a sourdough pizza. And for sourdough discard pizza dough recipes that I found, most of them required you to leave the sourdough overnight to rise. And so I had to find a recipe because we were planning on doing pizza on this particular night. And I found this recipe that required you to only use instant yeast, which I know kind of defeats the purpose of sourdough bread or of the whole sourdough idea. But in a pinch, it worked really, really well. And it was actually the best homemade pizza dough that we've ever had. And so we're actually going to do that tonight. So I got to run to the store, or my wife might run to the store and get some instant yeast for that. Yeah, I'll have to go and try to find that recipe. I'll post it down in the description for anyone who's interested in that. And besides that, we tried a sourdough discard pancake recipe, which turned out really, really good. I mean, I was a little hesitant about it because I just wasn't sure how it would turn out. And my wife was very hesitant because sourdough, she'd never had sourdough pancakes before, so it sounded really, really weird to her. But the recipe that I used, I'll also link down below. I thought it was gonna fail horribly because the pancake mix, after I mixed it, turned very, very lumpy and just didn't look like a traditional pancake mix. So I thought it was gonna fail. And then once I put it on the griddle, it cooked really well and it tasted great. So yeah, I'm glad we found that recipe for discard, and I'll probably end up using that over and over again, except I made way too many pancakes for the 2 of us. I think I made almost 20 pancakes and each of us had 3, maybe 4. So yeah, that's where we are on the sourdough journey. We're still learning, still trying to figure it out because it's definitely interesting. But it makes you can make a lot of stuff with sourdough. I think we want to try to do bagels pretty soon. I found a couple of recipes online. Well, actually, I watched a video on sourdough bagels and they looked really, really good. So I really, really want to make some. Anyway, that's enough about the sourdough for now. I just wanted to give anyone an update for those who aren't interested. And yeah, let's get to the topic on hand. Last time I talked about the Aaron Rodgers situation and what I thought would be the best case scenario. And since that time, Aaron Rodgers actually came out and said that he would basically only envision himself playing for the Jets next season. So nothing official has happened yet, but all signs are pointing to Aaron Rodgers becoming a Jet, and they just need to work out the compensation and stuff. According to some of the insiders' reports that I've read, it could happen up until the draft. That's the only real deadline because, Aaron Rodgers has all the leverage here. He could easily just say, all right, Green Bay, if you're not going to trade me, then I'm just going to show up and do the bare minimum and you're going to pay me $50-60 million, whatever it is. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. That's a very interesting scenario that played out, that has been playing out. And another scenario that I think is interesting is the whole Lamar Jackson saga. The latest report, and who knows how true it is, but basically someone close to Lamar Jackson told a team that he started to negotiate with that he's basically ready to move on from Baltimore. So it's pretty crazy to hear that. And man, Lamar Jackson could legit hold out and not play for Baltimore anymore. And I think a very dark horse that has made a lot of moves in free agency this offseason and could make a Super Bowl winning move is Detroit by going for Lamar Jackson. That would be scary. That would definitely become the team to beat in the NFC, in my opinion. Right now, I think Detroit and the 49ers are the top two teams based off the whole free agency period. Of course, a lot can change since, the draft is coming up and there's still a whole off season. So I think Philadelphia is still right there, probably number 3. They've lost a lot of key players, but they still have a really good team. It takes all 53 guys to go to a Super Bowl. So they're still a very capable team. They got both their cornerbacks back. They signed a good safety, and they signed another cornerback, Greedy Williams, who I believe is a pretty solid option. So we'll see how that goes there. But anyway, enough about all the other teams. Let's get to 49ers talk. I am on overthecap.com to list off all the players that the Niners have signed and lost during the free agency period so far. So here are the names up to this point. Hopefully nothing happens while I'm recording this episode. The Niners have signed Javon Hargrave, Cleveland Farrell, Sam Darnold, John Feliciano, Isaiah Oliver, Deshaun Gibson, Tabor Pepper, T.Y. McGill, Ross Dwelly, Jake Brendel, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, Kevin Givens, Colton McKivitz, Juwan Jennings, and Miles Hartsfield. They have lost Mike McGlinchey, Maurice Hurst, Charles Omenihu, Samson Ebicom, Emmanuel Mosley, Tarvarius Moore, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jordan Willis, Jimmy Ward, Hassan Ridgeway, Aziz Al-Shaair, and Daniel Brunskill. So there are definitely some interesting names on this list. Last time I talked about the kind of free agency wants I had for the 49ers, and they made some moves for sure. Javon Hargrave, obviously the big splash that they made. He's an interior defensive lineman. I thought, man, when I saw that move, I thought that was definitely the right move for the Niners, and I thought that Nick Bosa could really use another big time pass rusher / lineman to help him out, because the Niners have some decent defensive linemen, but a lot of them were just kind of depth players where I would say they were good, not necessarily game changers, but they were guys who could rotate in and out, and any one of them could go in and create pressure and help out in the passing game. So far, besides Javon Hargrave, they they re-signed a couple of their own guys like Kevin Givens and T.Y. McGill. And then they went and got Clelin Ferrell, which I think is actually a great move, in my opinion, because, he was, a very high draft pick for the Raiders, and he didn't work out over there. But the Niners have kind of this mentality, especially with Coach Kasarik, where they can really turn almost, it seems like any defensive lineman into a guy who can, come in and step in and do some good things for the team. Not necessarily like amazing things like Nick Bosa does, but, Clelin Ferrell, this could be a very good opportunity for him to sort of relearn and revive his career. So I thought that was a good move. Wasn't the big splash I wanted on the edge, but I think it's a low risk, possibly high reward move. So we'll see how that one goes. Another want I wanted was Taylor Heineke, and I thought, I'm pretty sure he priced himself out. He wanted to be a number 2 guy for sure, and he could possibly be a number 2 guy in San Francisco, possibly number 3, depending on how the Trey Lance and Purdy thing goes, if Purdy comes back healthy. So he went and signed with Atlanta, which I think was a good move for him. And the Niners got Sam Darnold. Now, this is a move where, man, it really seems like anything quarterback related is gonna tear apart the 49ers fans on Twitter. Because there were half the fans that were saying, oh, Sam Darnold, this means that he's going to be competing for a starting job with Trey Lance, blah, blah, blah. He's going to be the starter until Brock Purdy is ready, blah, blah, blah. And then the other half of that was like, oh, they got a really good second string quarterback to back up Trey Lance and then be a third string guy when Brock Purdy comes back. So I don't hate the Sam Darnold pickup. He is a little bit pricey if he's going to be a third string quarterback, but who knows? I think he's a strong number 2 option if Purdy ends up missing more time than they're anticipating. So excuse me. So I'll get into the whole quarterback situation in a little bit. John Feliciano is a move that I'm really excited about. I watched some tape thanks to Graham. What's his handle? Graham, I want to say it's like SF 49ers. I could be wrong. So forgive me on that. I should have looked that up. Hold on. Pulling it up. Oh yeah, it's the SF 49ers or the SF Niners on YouTube. And I believe that's his Twitter handle as well. But I could be wrong. He was a lineman, so I don't know exactly what level of line he played, but he is definitely someone who is very knowledgeable, and he breaks down lineman play on Twitter occasionally, and so I really trust what he's saying. And he went out and posted some videos from Feliciano from last year, and I think he's a really solid pickup. I think he's a guy that could potentially replace Brunskill and he can be a starter, he can be a backup, he can rotate, along the line. So I think it's a really solid pickup and a guy who I really would love to see starting next season. And so that was a solid move. I was a little surprised by it since they re-signed Colton McKivitz, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm excited for that. Besides that, they brought back a bunch of their old players, and they brought in 2 new DBs, Isaiah Oliver and Miles Hartsfield. Hartsfield was a guy who played in Carolina, so I'm guessing that's a guy that the new D coordinator vouched for. Yeah, I'm thinking that's probably a guy that Wilkes vouched for. Wilkes was a defensive back coach. That's kind of his area of expertise besides being a defensive coordinator. So, Wilkes is a really strong coach in my opinion. I think he was the best option available for a defensive coordinator for San Francisco. And to be honest, I have always felt like at least the last few seasons, the secondary has been the weak point for San Francisco. So the fact that he brought in Hartsfield and Isaiah Oliver means, I have faith in him. Those 2 guys are players that may not appear like starters on the surface, or maybe they played for weak teams last season, so they may not have that sort of sexy name, kind of like CJ Gardner-Johnson, but they could potentially, play similar roles. At least I think Isaiah Oliver could potentially be playing that role, the Jimmy Ward safety, corner, nickel kind of role. So yeah, I'm excited about the safeties. I do wish they would have gotten CJ Gardner-Johnson because he is a really, really good football player, and he ended up signing for really cheap in Detroit. So a little bummed out about that, but overall, nothing nothing too much, and I gotta leave for a sec. All right, so sorry about that. Had to take care of something, but there were a few key losses on the defensive line for San Francisco, and so that's an area that I'm a little worried about, but I'm hoping that they can supplement a lot of those missing spots in the draft. Apparently it's supposed to be pretty deep draft for the defensive line. So some of those guys are Maurice Hurst, Charles Omenihu, Samson Ebicom, Jordan Willis, and Hassan Ridgeway. I was hoping they would be able to find a way to sign at least one of those guys back. I think Omenihu is really good. He had some off the field stuff last year that is being resolved, and Ebicom's also a strong option. So we'll see how that kind of works out. Emmanuel Mosley was kind of a big blow in my opinion. He's a strong corner. He is coming off an ACL injury, but man, I thought he was going to have a really good year last year. And in that Carolina game, he had a pick six. I mean, Baker Mayfield threw it right to him. So also, sorry, my sincere and deepest condolences to Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans who went from the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, to Baker Mayfield. I'm sorry. It's almost as bad as losing all four quarterbacks during the NFC Championship. Well, losing your last two quarterbacks in the NFC Championship. Anyway, speaking of quarterbacks, Jimmy Garoppolo signed with Las Vegas Raiders. We all knew Jimmy G was leaving, but I think he's going to look really weird in silver and gold, in my opinion. I've seen a few Photoshops and it does not look natural. So, there are a lot of Jimmy's very hated and loved in San Francisco. For me, I appreciate what Jimmy did bring. When he came in 2017, he brought a lot of hope and, in my opinion, helped to turn this franchise around. I think they might have kept him a year too late. Last year it seemed like, I don't know. I think the season could have gone a little bit better if they would have stuck with Trey Lance and not run him into the ground. But I'll get into that in a little bit more in a sec. All right. Besides that, Jimmy Ward, we knew he was leaving. We were pretty sure he was going to go to Houston. Best of luck, Jimmy. Azeez Al-Shaair, I was actually really surprised to see him go to Tennessee. I thought he was going to go to Houston for sure, but Azeez Al-Shaair is going to be a really good middle linebacker for him. Congrats to Tennessee. And then McGlinchey is going to Denver. So good luck, Russell Wilson. Good luck. So at this point in free agency, I think that overall we have a good understanding of where the 49ers are going to be next season. There are so many guys or so many people who say that the 49ers are worse after free agency at this point. So to that, I think it's definitely premature to be saying that. I mean, at this exact moment, yeah, sure, they might be a little bit worse than last season. And if that's the case, then the Eagles are a lot worse. But you can't just look at everything on paper. You can't look at all the players that teams have lost. You have to look at everything. I mean, the Eagles did lose a lot of good players, but they're not just going to drop off. They're not like these teams that basically have bought their Super Bowl rings, like the Rams and the Buccaneers. There's an interesting trend where there some of the top teams are bringing in all these guys, signing these big contracts, and then pushing those contracts down the road. Basically, when the teams do that, I mean, we've seen what happens to those teams. Like the Rams, for example, all of a sudden they have fallen off and they suck, and they had to release a bunch of guys because they didn't have the money to afford those guys anymore. And while Detroit looks and they might be a very, very strong contender this year, besides having Jared Goff as their quarterback. A lot of those big-time players that they're getting, if they don't play the salary game the right way, they could very much end up in the same boat as Los Angeles, where they are very, very good for a year, and then they fall off after a season or two. So that is one thing that I am glad that the Niners don't do. I mean, they're kind of playing with the salary a little bit, and they've restructured quite a few deals, but overall, overall, they haven't made major splashes in free agency, and I think that's a very correct way to do it. And if you look at Philadelphia, they have lost a lot of good pieces, but like I said earlier, it takes all 53 players to make it to the Super Bowl. They have a lot of depth over in Philly, and they signed, some key pieces back. Jason Kelce's coming back as center. He's a tank. They got both their corners. They signed a strong running back from Seattle, Rashad Penny. So a lot of people are writing off Philly, and I just don't think you can do that. And I think it's the exact same conversation that you need to have about San Francisco. They're not just going to fall off because they lost a few guys or a lot of their defensive line. It means that they know how to build those positions and they have a lot of depth there. So to me, I'm not too concerned about free agency thus far. I mean, especially, losing two key defensive backs might be alarming on the surface, but their defensive coordinator is a defensive backs coach. And so I think that's been the weakest point for that defense the last couple of years, and that can be improved significantly with the right coach. So yeah, I'm excited to see how those two guys do. I hope the Niners bring in, or at least draft another cornerback or safety, because I think you need a lot of depth there. But yeah, I feel good with Lenore and Charvarius Ward as the two corners on the outside. Hopefully we see Womack this year. Hartsfield, I think, is a good pickup, and Oliver. So I think we got some good depth there. It's been a really good free agency. So now let's get into the main topic of today's podcast, and that is that the 49ers need to start Trey Lance next season. All right, I'm going to point out why I believe that Trey Lance should be the starter for next season. Not because he's necessarily the best quarterback on the team, or because he was a third overall pick, or he has a cannon of an arm. There are a few reasons that I guess a few points that I want to make about the whole situation regarding Trey Lance. And the truth is, the 49ers have broken Lance's leg. They've shot themselves in the foot. Literally. They broke Trey Lance's leg. And no, I don't want to hear about, it's football, injuries like that happen all the time. If you look at the Shanahan track record, I mean, there hasn't been, a quarterback that started 2 seasons in a row for Kyle Shanahan, at least in San Francisco. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo did that, but he's never been fully healthy for a full year. So, you look at RG3, you look at all the different quarterbacks that have come and gone through San Francisco. It's at the point where it's starting to look like that. The Browns fan who wears all the names of the jersey, or is that New York Jets? I don't remember. It's probably the Jets and the Browns. They probably both have one of those guys. Maybe it's the same guy. Now, look, Trey Lance last season, the thing that I found very concerning about Trey Lance, first of all, when the Niners drafted him, they said that they were going to develop him as a quarterback. I mean, everyone knows that he's very, very raw. He didn't play very much in college. He basically had a whole year off after he was drafted. Well, before his rookie season, he played in a couple of games in his rookie season, and then the off season following that, they developed this whole quarterback running zone read option scheme around Trey Lance. And yeah, they developed this whole running option package around Trey Lance. And the thing that was really concerning about that for me was that none of the quarterbacks behind Trey Lance could run Trey Lance's offense. When after he went down, they went back to the Jimmy G offense, which was right in the skill set of Jimmy G and Brock Purdy eventually. And the fact that they didn't even think to have a guy who could go in and basically also run the same. They didn't have a guy who was athletic enough to run the Trey Lance option plays that they were running. The power, QB power. Jimmy G couldn't run that. Brock Purdy couldn't run that. And I don't think even Josh Johnson could have run that once he came in. So I thought that was very strange. And I thought, it's just a classic case of Kyle Shanahan kind of getting into his own head, I believe. I think Trey Lance, if they want to develop him, they've got that he's not a runner. He's not a run first quarterback. One guy that comes to mind who is a great quarterback who can throw the ball and run it very effectively is Lamar Jackson. But Lamar Jackson has had some injury issues. It happens to running quarterbacks. But the difference is Lamar Jackson is a very, very natural runner. He is a guy that I hate saying this, but he's a running back who plays quarterback, and he's a good quarterback. So I don't want anyone to think that I believe Lamar Jackson is not a good quarterback. I think he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I'm just saying he has a skill set of a starting superstar running back as well. So look at the difference between Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is not a run-first quarterback. Yeah, he makes some plays with his legs. He can scramble around in the backfield and look downfield and make plays. He also has a really good tight end and some good fast receivers who can get open for him. So, he has a lot going for him as far as that goes, but he's not a run-first quarterback. And I think that the Niners need to follow that Patrick Mahomes model. Don't run your quarterback to the ground. Don't run him 12 times a game. Let him, for Trey Lance, he's not a natural runner like that. When he's when he's dropping back to pass in his rookie year, yeah, he looked a little skittish, but I think Brock Purdy looked even more skittish last season. It seemed like Purdy was very quickly, he makes one read, not open. All of a sudden he's, rolling out to the left and trying to make a play, or rolling out to the right, trying to make a play. I don't think Trey Lance is quite like that, but I do believe that he has the capability to be a little bit more mobile and to make more natural moves back there, to improvise and do more of the Patrick Mahomes type of thing. And one of the main differences between Purdy and Lance is Purdy didn't have a crazy strong arm to begin with. And following the UCL surgery, we don't know that it's going to be any stronger or any weaker. That's something we won't know until he's been fully cleared and can throw, because he still has to recover. Just because he can throw in 3 months doesn't mean you know how well he's going to be throwing in week 1 or week 6 or week 10. You just don't know. Could be setbacks, or could be he could lose some strength. He could gain some strength. And to be quite honest, even if he gains some strength, I think Trey Lance's arm trumps his arm as far as power goes. We've seen Trey Lance throw some absolute bombs, and he has maybe not quite a Patrick Mahomes arm. I would say more of a Josh Allen type of arm. And I think Josh Allen is one of the more comparable quarterbacks as far as Trey Lance goes. But of course, we haven't seen enough of Trey Lance to know who exactly he is. And that's why you got to start him. You've got to develop him as a quarterback, run your regular offense. Sure, make it a run-first offense. Maybe do some fake zone reads where Trey Lance is more of a decoy than anything. Let him drop back and pass the ball. Let him go and do some things, because we've seen him hit some deep crossers to, who was it, Ayuk or Debo? We saw him throw that bomb in the preseason to Danny Gray. I think he's got something special to him, and there's no way to know unless he plays. You can't just sit him on the bench this season. Now, it's tough because Brock Purdy did lose only one game last year, and it's because he got injured in that game. So it's tough to just take away that starting position from Brock Purdy. I understand that. But if I'm Brock Purdy, my primary objective is getting fully healthy, making sure that I'm not rushed back onto the football field. Even if it means I lose my starting job for a few weeks or even the season, you're young, don't risk the rest of your career for one season, Another reason why I believe that Trey Lance needs to start, first of all, let's talk about the points that we've hit so far. He has shown some great potential. He has run a weird offense. He's been run into the ground. Now, this is a guy that you drafted 3rd overall. You traded 3 first-round picks, some crazy compensation to get this guy. And this whole time, it's been on you to develop him. I'm talking to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch and those guys who took that risk. At the end of the day, who makes that call? Is it John Lynch? If someone overrides you, then you've got to live with it, and you've got to maybe deal with it. And I think you have to either start Trey Lance or you have to trade him if the guy who doesn't want, or the guy who wanted him, is no longer there. It seems like Rand Carthon, the new Titans GM, might have been the one that pushed him, but who knows? Who knows, honestly, and who cares at this point? The fact is, you took all this, there was a lot of risk involved when you made all those, when you traded away all that capital to get this unproven kid who started, 10 games in college or something like that. Some very crazy low amount. And so the reason why you start him is because you did that. And even though you're in the Super Bowl window, maybe you shouldn't have made those moves while you were still in your Super Bowl window. Yes, you want to have your quarterback of the future, but you don't give up all that capital. Those draft picks that they gave up for Trey Lance, they could have used to pick up some key pieces and potentially won the Super Bowl last year. What if they would have picked an offensive lineman who was better than McGlinchey or the right guard? They could have beat the Eagles. What if they drafted another defensive lineman besides Bosa? Maybe they would have beat the Eagles and gone on to beat the Chiefs. You don't know. And so that's why you got to take this chance on Trey Lance. Give him a full year. If he stinks, you own it. You move on. You've got Brock Purdy. The thing that I'm scared of, if they do decide to move on from Trey Lance too early, before he plays a full season, is that he does become a guy like Patrick Mahomes. He does become a guy like Josh Allen, where he has a crazy arm. He can make a bunch of plays. He doesn't necessarily need to run the football, but he can run the ball when he needs to. That's the kind of player that I think Trey Lance can become, and you don't know it unless you start him. So you either get rid of him right now, take the chance that he becomes that superstar player for some other team, or you start him this year and you find that out for yourself. And yeah, there is always a possibility that he stinks, and that would be too bad for everyone. And to be quite honest, I wouldn't blame Trey Lance for that. He's been in the NFL for 2 years and he's played 4 or 5 games. You're talking about this guy who's inexperienced, and they're not giving him an experience, and they're running him to the ground literally. So for me, I feel for Trey Lance, honestly. They've put him in such a bad position, and I hope that he's successful. I really do. He's a good kid. He's been nothing but a professional he's been nothing but a professional. So give the kid a chance. Own up to either your worst mistake or your greatest accomplishment. And that's what Trey Lance can be. Let him develop. Make him a pass-first quarterback, not a run-first quarterback. Because Steve Young, yeah, he was known for his scrambles. He was known for making plays, but he was also known for his arm. Joe Montana, he's a passer first. All these guys that have been winning Super Bowls, look at it. Patrick Mahomes, he's a pass-first quarterback. Matthew Stafford, pass-first quarterback. Tom Brady, pass-first quarterback. Even Jalen Hurts, in my opinion, is a pass-first quarterback. Jalen Hurts has a natural running ability. He's similar to Lamar. I think he's a little bit better passing than Lamar, but you gotta, let Trey Lance go in and play, figure out for yourself whether he's the guy or not. They're not going to figure that out in the offseason or in training camp or at practice. It's got to be in live games, which he's only played 4 of in the NFL. So yeah, those are my thoughts on why Trey Lance should start. It's tricky because they put themselves in this position, especially with Brock Purdy's success last season. Another reason why I think Trey Lance should start is to also give Brock Purdy the opportunity to heal. Not just heal, but heal 110, 120%. Because you're talking about an elbow injury on his throwing arm. They were very lucky they didn't have to go in and perform Tommy John surgery and completely restructure his arm. But you need to give him the opportunity to heal as well. Yeah, I think that's basically everything I had to say about the Trey Lance situation. He also has a loaded, talented group of players around him. If the thing is about Kyle Shanahan and his offense is it's a very good offense, and I think it can be taken up to the next level, and a guy like Trey Lance can do that. Because, what happens if I were a coach, there's a Shanahan, run first, physical offense that everyone knows, right? And then all of a sudden you come out one week and you spread the ball out, you throw it around and don't focus on the running game as much, and you alternate that throughout the season, and teams will never know how to defend you. The thought that I have, I think Trey Lance is a guy that can really open up the playbook even more than a guy like Brock Purdy, because I think we did see Brock Purdy's ceiling last year. He's a really talented kid. I think he reminds me of Drew Brees a lot, where Drew Brees was really good and talented, and he could make a lot of plays and throw for a lot of yards and do all the right things. But Drew Brees only won 1 Super Bowl. It's just one of those things where I like Trey Lance a lot, or I like Brock Purdy a lot, but Trey Lance can potentially be tiers above him. If Brock Purdy is their starter next year, he's in a higher tier. I think he's could potentially be a top 10 quarterback, but I believe you need a top 5 quarterback to really have a chance at the Super Bowl and to go head to head with a guy like Patrick Mahomes, because he is the guy right now. He's the guy that you need to figure out how to beat, because as far as I'm concerned, the NFL runs through Kansas City and through Patrick Mahomes. He beat the Eagles on an injured ankle. He beat them on a play where he had a run with his injured ankle that he re-aggravated in that game. So even though I hate Patrick Mahomes because he's not a 49er, I do have a lot of respect for him and how he plays the game. I mean, he's obviously the best quarterback in the NFL right now. And until you have a way to match him or have a crazy strong defense that can beat him, which probably not, you've got to find the guy that can. So let Trey Lance go out there. You need to start him and figure out who he is, what he can do, and see what he can become. And if he's not good, you have a backup plan. I think Sam Darnold can take the reins until Brock Purdy is healthy. But yeah, you've got to take that risk, in my opinion, that you can't just draft a guy and then do what they've done. So give him a chance. If it doesn't work out, you've got a backup plan and you can still make your Super Bowl run. You don't have to make, I don't know. I think you can give Trey Lance the same amount of games as Brock Purdy, and then you can truly make the decision between the two of them, I believe. I mean, he played 2 games last year in a weird offense. He played 2 games the year before that. Let him have 6 games this year, and I think in those 6 games you can determine if he's a guy or not. Yep, that's those are my thoughts. We'll see how the Niners play this whole situation, and that's the way that I want to see it happen, and I think that's the way it should happen. So yeah, thanks for listening, and if you agree with my takes or have any thoughts or opinions about it, go ahead and share it. And by the way, I don't want to come off as a Brock Purdy hater. I'm just saying I like both. I like Brock and Trey. I think Shanahan can turn Sam Darnold around and revitalize his career, but he's definitely he's either the number 2 or 3 quarterback. If Trey Lance and Brock are healthy, he's definitely the number 3 for sure, in my opinion. So I'm not saying I hate Brock Purdy. I'm not saying I love Trey Lance. I'm just saying I like both of these guys. I think Trey Lance has the most risk, but he also has the most potential reward. While Brock Purdy, you kind of know who he is and where he is. And in my opinion, is he a guy that can go head to head with Patrick Mahomes? At this point, probably not. There's not a lot of guys that can do that, but he can get you into the playoffs and potentially win a few games there. So those are my thoughts. Again, like I said, let me know what you think, and send me your comments down below, and let me know if you want to hear any more 49ers takes. I believe I have a few upcoming episodes that won't be football related, but it's just that time of year, and this is my podcast, so I'll talk about whatever I want to. Anyway, this has been Storytime with Chris.